Hey guys, sorry I can't be there today to continue on our close reading response, but what I thought I'd do is I'd make this little quick video and I wrote up an exemplar for the body paragraph so that you could have a look back over it, so you can work on that today, work on it throughout the weekend, and if you're not finished, come Monday at lunchtime to B4 so we can make sure that you stay on track for the assessment for next Thursday. So a couple of things I want to know. In your OneNote folder under close reading, you'll have a tab that says 29th of June, close reading response structure. So if you were away yesterday, this is where you're going to find that information about the introduction that we completed. Okay, so if you scroll down, you'll see that we've got a little information on the introduction, what we tried to do. Okay, now if you're not aware, both of the actual pieces of film are actually located on our Moodle page. So that's where you'll be able to find the 20-minute excerpts from both documentaries. Once you go into Year 13 English Studies and you scroll down past some of the standard information, at the very bottom you'll see the close reading documentaries. That's where you'll be able to go back through and watch Fahrenheit 9/11. Okay. You can also
was to certify the election
results if you want to go take screenshots of certain things. And then the second clip for the greatest movie ever sold is just directly underneath that as well.
One of the most successful product placement agencies.
I recommend that if you are using a visual language feature, that you basically full size these and take a screenshot of scenes where there are particular camera shots or angles for you to use. So you've got the actual documentaries there, and you've actually got a tab on all the aspects located in your close reading folder. So from your section, when you see a folder called Close Reading, you're going to have a variety of folders there to kind of help out with understanding the aspects. They'll all start with the term documentaries. So here are the visual film techniques, and here's a link that's going to go to a page that's going to give you kind of a definition and an explanation for all the major types of shots that are used and why they are actually used in film. Gone ahead and listed all of those here as well, and we had a little activity for you a couple of weeks ago. You've also got, under documentaries, oral film techniques. You've got discussions about non-diegetic music and voiceovers, as well as some additional reading to explain why these things are so important in documentaries. Okay. Again, you've got links that are embedded there to help you kind of understand how these things are used in film. And this is the kind of information that you want to read through and pick through when you're actually explaining some of your arguments. You've got documentaries' narrative structures, and we covered 6 structures in class. And again, for more information on each, you'll notice that there's a link so you can kind of go to an external website. That external website is going to have a little bit more of a breakdown of each of those definitions, with bolded terms that really get an idea of what it's there to do. You've also got topics on themes and ideas. So where do these themes and key ideas actually originate from? Where do they come from? And a couple of examples of them located underneath as well. And then finally, the most important probably thing to focus on is our purpose. You know, what's the actual purpose that these documentaries set out to do? How do they do that? Okay, you'll see there's an embedded article about how documentary and movies specifically look at the current social changes that are happening in our society and that they're created to influence an audience. Okay, that's really important stuff. So we've got some more information on how do we categorize audience. So just in that close reading tab, you have all the information you need to make sure that you can discuss any of those aspects in a significant amount of detail. So we really want to start by looking over that reading response structure. Okay. Now, for those of you that were here yesterday, the introduction, most of us got completed. All we wanted to do to start it off was identify the documentary film genre and the filmmakers included in that genre. Now, I've gone ahead and written up here an exemplar, but the exemplar is not obviously for documentaries, and it's not for the particular techniques that you might pick for your documentary. That's in part just to ensure that, when you're writing, it's your own work, and that I'm not influencing your work in any such way. So the introduction is a pretty straightforward process. It's really that information that the marker needs to know to be able to assess your work. So they need to know, one, what's the genre and who are the filmmakers? Okay. What are the films that you've actually viewed? Okay, or what are the films that the excerpts are from? Then a little information about the specific excerpt. What point of the film is it? How long is it? And what kind of aspects you're going to talk about. And again, like I said before, I think it's important that you use visual film techniques if you can, because you'll have the ability to screenshot certain things and use that as evidence in your actual response. And then finally, again, the really important thing is, what's the overall purpose that you're going to go into more detail about in the actual paper. So, is it to inform and educate? Is it to persuade somebody? Is it to present a different kind of reality? What is that particular purpose for those documentaries? Now, once you've finished the introduction, then obviously you're going to have to go into your body paragraphs. And instead of just necessarily saying, you have to have 3 body paragraphs or 4 body paragraphs, I think it's important that you break your kind of body down into 2 sections, and that each section itself is a different aspect that you're going to pick up on. Because in the marking criteria, you do need to talk about at least 2 different aspects. So how I would suggest you arrange it is that your first section, or your first body section, is split up into 4 small paragraphs, okay, that look at things like the aspect, a detailed example from the films, and how that supports the purpose. So if you look on the screen and back into the exemplar template here, what I've done is I've started that body paragraph with a paragraph on the aspect. So I've picked visual film techniques. So in my opening sentence, I've gone ahead and said, one visual film technique that the Wachowskis use extensively in their films is a close-up camera shot. The use of this close-up can be seen in these excerpts. So all I've done there is just identify. So once you've gone ahead and identified the actual aspect, you need to actually explain what the purpose of it is. Okay, so the purpose of this technique, for instance, is to show emotion, to really emphasize something in that frame. So if you're doing a visual oral film technique, go back into the notebook, follow the links. If you're doing a structure, same thing, follow the links that are in the notebook that explain each of those structures in a bit more detail. Because on those links too, you'll get an idea of what the effect is, which is the final part of that opening paragraph. And outside here, the close-up camera shots, they alert an audience to an important detail, or they're used to convey an emotion that we can make a connection with as an audience. So that's your opening paragraph there. That tells us exactly what aspect. It tells us that you know what it does and what its purpose is. Now, following that, you actually have to have some examples from those excerpts. So what I'm suggesting is that you do 2 small paragraphs, 1 for each film. Okay? So in the first example, you get started off by just identifying what scene it is. And for those of you that have seen The Matrix, I've used the pill scene because it's Neo's decision to take one of those pills that really sets off the film. Now after that, all you want to do is you want to describe that scene and what's happening in it for the reader. The reader may not have seen the documentary, so they may not be aware of what's happening. Okay, so I've said in this scene, Neo's introduced to Morpheus. He presents Neo with a choice between discovering the truth and going back to where he was. So he offers him this red and blue pill, and that choice will determine whether he discovers the existence of the Matrix. Now I've gone ahead and described that scene. I've got to go back now and take the aspect. So I've talked about close-up. So now I've got to say, how is that used to get the message across? Well, I'll say while there are a number of camera shots, one particular close-up is Morpheus clearly demonstrates the question that's being asked of us and Neo. Which one do we want to choose? And so the reason it's being directed at us is they want us to consider what choice we would make. So once you've gone ahead and explained it, you need to support it with some kind of evidence. Now, with the beauty of visual film techniques is you can take a screenshot. So I can say in the screenshot of the close-up in question, although it's closed up on Morpheus, it's the reflection in his sunglasses that helps get that idea across, is that we and Neo have to make a choice. So I've gone ahead and I've just clipped that little shot, and I've backed it up by saying during this close-up, Morpheus says, take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Going back to the idea of our need to question the society around us and things that are occurring. Now I do the exact same thing for my second film. I follow that exact same order to show detailed examples. So my next paragraph, now I'm going to talk about V for Vendetta. So the revolutionary speech scene from V for Vendetta is where V talks to the people of England. You know, what's happening? Well, he's just taken over this TV station. Okay? And he's talking about what happened, how they lost their freedom in England to the new chancellor. So now I've set the scene, but I need to explain the aspect, how the aspect comes in. Where is the close-up? And while there are several close-ups of V during that scene, he's wearing a mask. There's no change in expression in the mask. So I've decided to use a close-up of the detective, or the inspector that's used to hunt down V as this terrorist. Okay, because V is trying to get us to question whether or not things are right and wrong. And so I've used this close-up here because it shows that he's a little confused, that for the first time he's actually thinking maybe V isn't the bad guy. Maybe his own government is. Maybe his own chancellor is. And I've tried to support that with a quote of what's happening at that time. I've said the expression on his face, you know, is one of stunned silence. But in the background, in the voiceover, you can hear V saying, and all he demanded in return was your silence, obedience, and consent. Okay? Again, showing us that it's about us and the choices that we make. Now, I'm almost done my first kind of body section here, because now all I have to do is bring it back to what I think the purpose of the film is, and the audience that the film is being directed to. Okay? I start by going back to what the filmmaker's purpose is. And again, if you're unsure, go follow those additional links. The links for assessment. Read up on Michael Moore a bit. Read up on Morgan Spurlock. Read up on those documentaries. Okay? Because here it's quite clear, the Wachowski brothers, both of these films, they've got patterns and connections. Okay? There are things that are very similar. Okay? And that although they have different characters, different settings, the purpose remains the same. They want us to question the society and things that we have around us. Okay. So I'd go ahead and state that clearly to begin. I've got to again bring it back to the aspect, because that's how we're showing all of this. So again, I want to emphasize that, you know, it's the close-ups of Morpheus speaking. It's the close-up of the inspector while V is speaking that makes us realize that we ourselves have to make the decision. We're the ones that have to decide right and wrong here. And that leads us to the very last thing we want to do to end the first body section, and that is, what does it all matter? What's the point? What's the beyond the text? And this is going to be completely individualistic based on what you think about the websites you've read, about any other information you've collected. And the way I kind of looked at it from at least these two dystopian films, V for Vendetta and The Matrix, is that it gets us to think about what could possibly go wrong in our society. You know, everything from online privacy through artificial intelligence, you know, things like Brexit, Trump, all these weird kind of right-wing conservative governments coming up. You know, it makes me realize that all this seems absolutely ridiculous and far-fetched. But despite all that, we still have a choice. And it's the choices we make that are really important. Now that's my daughter in the background. She's the reason I'm home today. I'm going to end this clip. I'm going to pause it. I'll be back in a second. Right, sorry about that interruption. So going back, that's my first kind of body section there on my first aspect. Now if I do two of those, that's pretty much the bulk of my close reading finished. You know, visual film techniques might be one aspect. You might choose to do a different one. You might use oral film techniques. You might go ahead and use structure. You might go and use key ideas and themes. Okay? But all that information is located in the notebook under all those tabs in close reading. Really familiarize yourself with them. Okay? Because our goal is to have this first section of the body, which is those 4 little paragraphs, done before Tuesday morning's class. So even if you don't get it all done now, okay, go home, keep working on it, okay, and come back on Monday at lunch if you're struggling. We'll sit down and talk about it, because Tuesday morning we need to move on to the next section to give us enough time to make sure that we'll get it done. Okay? Thank you for your patience. I apologize again about the background noise. I hope this video makes sense. I hope the exemplars make sense. And I encourage you to send me a message. Just email me at sjarek@fieldinghigh.school.nz if you have any questions or concerns. Okay? Thanks very much. We'll see you on Tuesday.